Well, hey there, everybody, and welcome to our Firefly After Show. Yes, our Firefly After Show. My name is John Campea to get things started off, and I'm going to be your host. I'm going to introduce the two people with me. First of all, sitting to my right is Kaori.
Hi, hey guys.
And beside her is Anne.
What's up, everybody?
And you are indeed not seeing things. This is a Firefly After Show, and yes, you may be thinking to yourself, but John, Firefly is no longer on the air, and you are correct in saying that. But, you know, we were talking the other day about shows we love, and Firefly came up, and then Anne was telling me that Kaori has never seen Firefly before. And they had this idea that we should do a Firefly After Show, even though it's a retro, going back and looking back, we should do a Firefly retro after show where Anne and I can talk about it from the perspective of people who have seen it, but then Kaori is here from the perspective of this is her first time watching it.
I know.
So we just got through watching the pilot episode, the hour-and-a-half long pilot episode of Firefly, and it's been a while since I've seen the pilot.
Yeah,
It has been a while. And, you know, the first thing I'm going to say about this, because I want to go over to Kaori and really get her impressions of the first episode. I forgot how much unlike the rest of the series the first episode is. Because the first episode to me is the most serious. It's got the most stern tone because moving forward, once we get out of the pilot, and I'm not giving anything away. You know we're not going to do big spoilers here because Kaori hasn't seen the rest of them.
Oh my gosh, people, please don't comment any spoilers for her.
Don't give us huge spoilers. But one of the things is they made a little bit of a change, I think, after the pilot to go, I mean, Captain Mal is still the same guy, but there's a little bit more jovialness, if you will, and a little bit of a lighter tone. I mean, he still certainly gets dead serious throughout the show, but I find the show gets a little bit lighter as early as the second episode. And the first one definitely had Mal has a bit of a heavier hand in it. But I found and would you agree with this, that most of the characters, though, there's a very firm introduction in this first one. And these are the characters we see and grow with throughout the series. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes. There's no question that, you know, Simon is the doctor and Kaylee is the mechanic, and you have Wash, who's the pilot. One thing that Joss Whedon does really well is character definition, and you can totally see it in the pilot episode. Now, I unfortunately am not getting my Firefly cherry popped like this one over here. That will never happen again, obviously. So seeing it a second time around, I think it's been like 2 years probably since I saw this. The first time I watched it, I have to say I thought it was rather long, and there was a ton of stuff going on.
So much going on in that first epised, yeah.
You know, because you do have to set up the show. But what you're saying, John, that it picks up really in the second episode, I actually have to kind of disagree, having seen the pilot for a second time now. I think that it picks up when they get all the passengers on Firefly. I would watch this episode in two pieces.
Right.
Up to from the beginning to when they pick up all the passengers, and then from that point on as the second episode, because that to me is really where it kind of split and the tone really shifted for me there.
Now, one other thing before we get to Kaori.
Okay.
How much did the last scene of this episode remind you of the last scene of Serenity?
Yeah.
Did you catch, like, really? I mean, that's not giving anything away. But for those of you who have seen it, and by the way, we're going to culminate at the end of our, once we get to the last episode of Firefly, after that we are going to review, make a part of this, we're going to do a review of Serenity as well. But I remember, I forgot about the ending to this episode. And I'm watching the ending, and I'm like, as that scene's beginning, I'm like, this feels an awful lot like the last scene in Serenity. And as the scene plays out, I got me to thinking, oh, this was probably very intentional the way this was done. But anyway, Kaori, this is really your show because you're the one who has not seen this. you are getting your proverbial cherry popped. So walk us through your impressions and what you've seen and things like that. As someone who's just watched for the first time.
I feel like there was so much going on that I could watch it again and catch things that I didn't catch the first time around. And I feel like it could have been its own movie. Even if it ended the way it ended, there could have been a sequel as a movie. I can't even imagine this being a TV show. And that's how I feel about the first episode. And I was listening to you talk about how it was a very serious feeling and very strong compared to the rest of the other episodes following. And that's interesting because I felt that it was a little serious tone with some slightly cheesy westerny feel to it. But then at the end was when I felt like, oh, if it's going to lead to this lightheartedness that we see at the end, something might change. So that was kind of interesting that you said that.
All right, walk me through here then. Your impressions of the different characters. So let's start with one of my favorites. Let's start with Kaylee. Okay. Obviously the ship's engineer, all that kind of stuff. And you don't really realize she's the ship's engineer till really pretty late in the game. But your impressions of Kaylee?
I think she is probably the dreamer of the crew. She's the one that brings out the positive spirit in the pilot, perhaps. And whenever there's a negative or pessimistic force,
it's so fun listening to you do this because we know where the show actually is going. So this is great. This is fun.
I'm trying to sit back so she doesn't see my face expression.
Please continue.
Keep a serious face.
Well, I just feel like she's the positive force on the ship, and she's the one that is, if she changes, it might change the. I'm now thinking about what you guys possibly know that I don't know, but I think she's important in the ship because she's what makes everything so joyful and cheerful.
Would you say she's the one that makes everything shiny?
And happy?
I love that word, by the way.
I noticed this time around, I noticed how much they say it.
Especially
in the show.
her.
Yes.
Yeah, that's, how's the ship? Everything's shiny. I love that word. I totally love that word. Okay, so let's go to Jane, the muscle of the group. It was played by Baldwin. What do you think of Jane?
I honestly thought he was kind of, I don't know if I could say this, a dickwad.
Of course you can say it.
Yeah, but
he's a fucking dickwad.
Yeah,
you can say it.
He's a dickwad, and I was wondering, I thought he actually did backstab the captain, and I was surprised that he didn't in the end. And that completely gave me a 180 on what I thought he would be on this show, because now I'm thinking there's a certain alliance between him and the pilot, maybe, unless there's money involved, which I feel like the way they implied it, there's no money that he can offer that would make him go against his captain.
You know what? One of the things I loved about this episode was that really was such a great moment when Mal says to him, but he did try to make you a deal, right? Why didn't you do it? And he says, the money wasn't right. And then Mal says, what happens when the money is right? And Jane just says, then that'll be an interesting day. I love that that whole thing, and very, very prophetic of the relationship that they have as the show goes along. Okay, let's talk to you then about Simon and River. I was going to call and say Summer. I keep confusing Summer Glau's real name with her show name. I want it's wait a minute, is her real name Phoenix or River? Is her real River Phoenix? Is her real name River or is her real name Summer? I keep forgetting.
Or Isabel Rochev.
Oh yeah,
I know.
So what were your talking about the brother and sister River and Simon?
I think they're not as good as we like to think they are. There's something odd about the doctor. I feel bad for him, but there's something more to it than just saving his sister. And oh man, I'm just, I don't know what's going on. And with Summer, I do feel her pain, but I think there's something really powerful in her that I don't know. I can't even imagine what it is yet, because obviously they were testing her or using her and hurting her for her intelligence. And apparently she's much smarter than her brother, who's extremely intelligent. So two intelligent people, I think they might turn against the ship maybe.
This is one of the things I love about the whole idea of doing this after show of Firefly, because remember, everybody, all of us who have seen this show already, I think Kaori, one of the great things about having Kaori doing this is that it is helping me remember my experience the first time watching the show and all these different things that were going through my head. And now we have somebody here who this is actually happening for the first time. Okay, so let's move on to Wash then, the pilot. Wash.
The pilot is very interesting, I think. I think that the pilot, that's hard because I think he just, I don't know what to think of the pilot.
Maybe you didn't see enough of him yet?
Yeah, like just that he is a good pilot and that he loves his wife and respects his wife and kind of has trouble with the Mal.
With the captain.
Yeah, the captain.
Okay, let's talk about the captain then. Okay. So talk about your impressions of Mal.
Mal likes to be a jerk, but deep down inside, he is a very caring guy. He really cares about Kaylee, obviously. And at the end, he couldn't kill off the doctor and Summer Glau or whatever her name, River. But he will do anything to protect his ship. And I also think that he has a thing for the prostitute or the companion. Yes.
Well, speaking of which, the
whore.
Let's talk about the whore. Let's talk about Inara. Mm-hmm. So your impressions, your feelings towards about Inara.
She has all the power because she has the captain's power. That's what I think. I think deep, like, he has this infatuation towards her, but he knows that's pretty taboo. So, but she has his power. She has all the power on the ship, I think.
All right, and Shepherd Book.
Now that guy, he threw a punch or something, surprisingly, and he also wanted to go save the, what was the guy's name? The guy that was trapped?
Oh, the mole, if you will.
The mole. Expendable. Yeah, the expendable. So initially I wasn't quite sure what side he's really on, but I think he's got a lot up his sleeve that we have yet to find out, because he also helped the ship escape. He chose to help, I was going to say Jewel State, but Kaylee, when she couldn't engineer physically, he chose to stay in and do his part.
And the last member of the crew we haven't touched on yet, Zoe, Wash's wife.
Okay, so along with Wash, I don't have much to say about her either, except she's a tough, badass chick who is very straight edge, who will follow her captain all the way through.
Well, and what we learned from the beginning of the show too is that she's been with Mal a long time. They were in the war together, and stuff like that. One of the things, watching the episode again, one of the things that I realized that this pilot didn't do so well was they introduce us to this war at the beginning, right? But they don't really let us know what that war is. And it's not like, this isn't a situation where we're kind of wishing that, they spell everything out for us right in the first episode. But at least I think the show could have done a better job in its pilot, at least giving us the underlying background information. Like, they could have done a better job explaining. Like, I'm watching the show and I know the history. And even I'm like, okay, how does this fit in? You know, they don't talk enough about, they kind of reveal that he was in this war and they lost the war, but they don't really explain, okay, what was that war? What's going on? What is this alliance? What is it? And I think in the pilot episode, they could have done a better job explaining just the underlying premise of what's happening. What's this world that they're all living in and that they're flying in? What is this world? And I don't feel like the pilot did a very good job of that initially, but I'm not the best person to give my opinion of that. Kaori, you just saw it for the first time. Did you feel like you had a handle on the world that was going on?
No, I actually agree with you. I was a little confused in the beginning. I understood there was a war and I understood that they lost, and then I understood 6 years later they were doing something evil, I guess, or something bad, and they're about to get caught. And I understood gist and parts and pieces and put it together. And after I watched the show, I had to run up on Wikipedia and read the plot to like really fill in those holes. So yeah, they could have tied those things a little better with, I don't know, prefaces like, this is a war that's going on, whatever. But yeah, I agree with you.
And what are some of the things, having watched it now, that you think the pilot could have done better?
And I don't know, maybe Kaori can speak to this, but when I first watched it, and I still remember, I had to ask you, why are they speaking Chinese?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because there was just so much going on that I just didn't, pick it up as maybe everybody else did, that this is the world they live in now, that somehow the Chinese and English are the main languages and it's kind of cultures blend together. But that wasn't so obvious for me the first time around.
Were they speaking only Chinese? I felt like they were speaking another language as well.
I think it's just Chinese.
Okay.
I think it's just Chinese.
Right.
I think so.
And so the fact that we're even debating it right now, maybe that makes my point right, is that it wasn't so obvious.
Here's the funny
right.
thing. I think, and this is unfortunate because I think the first part of Serenity, the movie, does a better job explaining this universe that they live in than the pilot episode of the show that started out. Mm-hmm. I think the first few minutes of the movie, because they use those scenes. Oh, I can't say.
No, you can't.
Stop.
Oh, no, but I can't say this. They use those scenes with River, the young River. Remember the child version of River, to kind of explain what is the alliance,
right,
what was this war.
That's a good
In
point.
a 1-minute scene, they explain the universe and everything that's going on, and they should have had a scene like that in this pilot. They should have. But aside from that, what a brilliant pilot. I mean, you got these rich, amazingly distinct characters. Everybody from Wash, who's a little bit of the jester, but there's more to him than being the jester. The fact that he is with Zoe is just, for fans of the show, that's just a mind-blowing thing throughout the entire thing. They do a really good job, I think, introducing the Doctor and River. They give us a little bit of understanding there's something very special about River without giving us anything else, and they just feed that to us as the show goes on. Mal, just a terrific. The dynamic between, they kind of do establish the relationship between Mal and the dynamic between Mal and Inara. It gets a little more snarky as things go, but Jane is. I love Jane. A Man Called Jane. I could sing that song. I could wear his hat. I mean, just the way they introduce all these characters, including Shepherd Book. I mean, all of them, they're rich, they're diverse, and you can see the chemistry that forms. And especially once you get into episode 3 and episode 4, the chemistry and the dynamics between each one of them. And the fun thing is that the dynamic between any two of them is completely unique to the dynamic of any other two in the show, right?
That's a good point.
So the dynamic between Wash and Mal is a very different dynamic than between Wash and Jane. Mm-hmm. The dynamic between Inara and Kaylee is completely different than the dynamic between Inara and Shepherd Book. I mean, every dynamic individually is so cool. The dynamic of them as a group is so cool. And the dynamic of Mal to his crew is so cool. And they started off so strong in this episode that I'm sitting back and I'm watching it. And they had some really key scenes in this show, in this pilot, that I think gives us a lot of insight into Mal and the different members of the crew. For instance, like when they go to meet, what was the woman's name? Patience? Was she the one?
Yes.
When they go to meet Patience, Mal already knows she's there to double cross him. And even when she tips her hand that I'm here to double cross you, he still wants to give her a way out. Mm-hmm. And doesn't, and he lets her live. Well, sort of the Reavers go to the world. But anyway, he still wants to give her away. He doesn't want to have to kill anybody if he doesn't need to. But at the same time, as soon as he shows mercy and lets Patient live, he walks back to the ship and sees the mole threatening another person on his ship, and no thought, no hesitation, nothing. Not, hey, you better put your gun down. Just bang.
Gave
and
him a
he
chance
kills
already.
him. And in that 2 minutes, that 2-minute span, I think we learned so much about the character, especially important stuff to start a show with. And just so cool. Anyway, what were some things that stood out to you, Kaori, most about the episode?
I was surprised, again, I was surprised that Jade didn't backstab him the way I thought he did, because during that scene with the trade-off, the sniper gun was constantly going back and forth towards Mal. And I also, what stood out was, I think Inara and Shepherd have a very interesting relationship.
Oh, so they set that dynamic up so cool, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
Because, it's taboo, but then she's very helpful. And I don't know. I almost thought it was sexual, but then I'm like, nah, I think that's safe for the captain. But we'll see.
And there's that scene where they, now I'm getting confused, but where Book is on one side and Inara's on the other, and I think they shoot the guy, right? Is that what happened? But their reaction to that happening was completely different and indicative of what their characters are. You know from the beginning that Shepard is supposed to be some sort of religious guy, and Inara, what she does for a living. So the fact that their reaction to seeing the same thing happen in front of them was completely different says a lot about the characters as well.
And I'm glad we brought up Inara again. One of the really cool things about Inara, she is in many ways the deepest of the characters, because she is two completely different worlds. She is, in Mal's words, she's the whore. Mm-hmm. Okay? But including Simon, she may be the most educated, the most cultured, the most civilized, the most respectable person on the ship. They have these two polar opposite worlds converging in this one character. And that's one of the things that I think makes her so deep and so rich. And one of the things that I think confounds Mal about her. That Mal never really knows how... It's really cool to see. Anyway, and what are some of the other things that really stand out to you about the first episode, this pilot for Firefly?
Well, you talked about the character development. And I don't know if you'd really fall in love with the characters in the pilot. You get to know them. And then obviously through time, you might fall in love with them or whatever.
I fall in love with Kaylee in the very first episode. Kaylee is... you fall in love with her. She's impossible not to fall in love with in that first episode.
The moment she bites into that strawberry.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, and the look on her face.
And it's like a really slow scene.
She could be my friend.
We can eat together. Where was I going with that? The characters are intriguing, right? You want to get to know them. But for me, I think I remember seeing the pilot for the first time and thinking, how can there be so many episodes of this if all they're going to do is like rob people and these characters are going to be this every time? Mm-hmm. And then they bring in River Tam.
Right.
And she is unfrozen from the cryogenics. And I'm like, holy shit, this just opened up a whole nother storyline I was not expecting. And this is a storyline that I am completely infatuated with. And I want to see where this is going. And that for me was, from the pilot, was one of the best introductions of a character I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah, it was fascinating. Because it was really cool because as it goes to commercial break, and we watched it on Netflix, and a lot of commercial, but they open it up, and there's a lot of dramatic pauses going on. They open up the cryogenic thing, and everybody's just looking and staring, and there's silence, and the camera cuts back and forth, and then it goes to Mal. It's been dead silent for about 6 seconds on screen, and Mal's reaction just, huh. Which was so, and then fade to black, go to commercial. So good. But even as they're going to commercial, you don't really know what's going on. Like, okay, dude's got a girl. I'm kind of convinced at this point that this dude is probably not a bad guy. So what's going on here? And then they say sister. And yeah,
I want to know what this one thinks about that scene.
It's actually kind of funny because every time it would fade to black to go to commercial, I thought, is this the end of this episode? Because already so much happened that I thought that would make sense for it to be the pilot. But it didn't. It kept going, and that happened like 6 times throughout this long pilot. I can't believe that it's just a TV show for this pilot, because it really felt like a movie.
It feels cinematic, doesn't it?
It does.
It really does feel cinematic. And especially when you go back to, what was it, 2002?
2002.
Holy crap.
The visual effects for TV.
I was thinking that too.
Like, pretty impressive stuff. Mm-hmm. And probably expensive stuff. But, well, look, we're going to cut this first episode short. Undoubtedly, to me, Firefly, and a lot of people talk about TV shows that die before their time. Obviously, I think most people would agree. Firefly stands as the archetype, if you will. It's the proof in the pudding of shows that were canceled way before their time. I mean, it's amazing to see right up from that panel at Comic-Con last year, celebrating the anniversary of Firefly and all this kind of stuff. How passionate the fans become. It's developed such a huge on a cult level, such a huge following. It's just amazing. And I'm so excited to be watching this show again. And maybe you're watching the show. I know some people tweeted me and they said they were going to start watching the show for the first time so they can come along with us
awesome.
for
Love
these
it.
after shows, which is awesome. That's great. And maybe this is your excuse to watch the show again. Or maybe you're a veteran of the Firefly Serenity universe. Maybe you're a long-time brown coat and you just want to turn in. You've got a little voyeur in you and you just want to watch somebody watching it for the first time. Which either way, we're glad you joined us. So I'll be honest with you. I don't think we're going to have a regular schedule for this. I think it's not like we're going to do this every Monday. I think whenever Kaori can probably come over and we can watch an episode. We may do 2 one week, we may do 3 one week, we may do 1 week. I don't know, but we'll post them up as we go. But we do want you to communicate with us. So here's what we want you to do. Well, I want you to tweet to us your Firefly love. Tweet to us what you loved about Firefly, what you loved about this episode.
Minus the spoilers, please.
Minus the major spoilers for Kaori. But also questions you may want to ask Kaori as somebody who has never watched the show before. Maybe you want to know what her experience is now with this or with this or with this or with this as somebody who's going through the show for the first time. But do us a favor. Tweet to us. Use the hashtag Firefly After Show. All one word, obviously. Hashtag Firefly After Show. So tweet that. And we'll collect all those tweets and we'll read a bunch on the next episode. And we're so happy you guys are coming along on this Firefly journey with us that will culminate in Serenity. So any closing thoughts, you guys?
I'm just extremely excited to be finally watching this TV show. And I'm not doing it alone. I'm doing it with John. I'm doing it with Ann. I'm doing it with you guys. So join the fun.
Ann?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Shiny.
It's shiny. Everything's shiny. All right, guys. Listen, you guys can find me if you want to follow me either on Twitter or on Facebook. You can always find me just at John Campea. Ann, where can people find you?
You can find me at Ann Campea. I was going to say Kaori.
You can find me there. Kaorious.
So thanks a lot for joining us, guys. We'll be back again probably in the next couple of days for the next episode. So please remember, I'm going to bring that Twitter hashtag up again. Tweet with the hashtag Firefly After Show. Send us your comments, your thoughts, questions for Kaori, whatever, and we'll read a whole bunch of them the next time we do an episode of the Firefly After Show. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. Really glad you're coming along with us. So until next time, bye-bye.